Welcome everyone to Organization Labs Alignment Kickoff. This is the first one, and we're going to do all of these weekly, and these will all be on YouTube. And this is where we come to get aligned within Organization Labs, a working group / colony of Little Fish Foundation. And start off by just looking at the agenda of what we're going to talk about today. What the point of this is. This will be a more structured alignment meeting. Hopefully the next few ones will be more discussion based, but we're going to start off by talking about what the objectives of Organizational Labs is. That includes the research and operations, the two objectives that are most pressing right now. And then we will jump into how do we achieve those objectives with Little Fish values. And we will look at all those values. We will look at teal principles at work, discuss them, and then we will look at the white paper and some of the stuff in the white paper that applies to the work we do at Organizational Labs. And at the end, we're gonna bring all of this into practice. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at one of our community initiatives, the weekly reports, and think a little bit about how we can progress with the weekly reports in light of all the objectives and the Little Fish values we will discuss today. And
that sounds awesome. That sounds like a really good plan.
Yeah. So let me just quickly open up. I thought I prepped for this, but happens.
Check out, come on.
Yeah, sorry guys. Sorry.
Yeah, pulling up the vault with the
All right.
with like the values and then also there's that Miro board. I can post that in the chat.
Oh yeah, if you can post the action board on the chats, the agenda.
Yeah, I got the agenda. How about the roles of Little Fish? This one.
Oh, we could use that one as well. That also has this. Yeah, I think this is the original one that I put up many months ago.
Yep.
This is in the action board. I think maybe the one of the roles of fish board is a little more recent, but it doesn't quite matter. So
looks the same. Yeah.
The original idea behind Organizational Labs was divided in three. One is research, and this is the outer part. One is business development, also outer part, and one is operations. Today, what matters within Organizational Labs is the operations part and the research part. First, let's start off with research. So what are we doing with research? This is some of the work Harsh has been doing. This is some of the work I've been doing, trying to understand how decentralized organizations work, how DAOs operate, what are the business processes within these organizations that we can apply, we can generalize, that we can build around. And that also includes like the market, doing some market research. Once we have something with actions that we're using, you can apply this to the work we're doing with Ikigai workshops. And that's something similar to market research. Something we haven't gotten around to talking about much, but I think as we progress, it will take more and more of importance. It will be governance research, because lots of new ideas there that we'll try to keep up with across all the blockchains. And of course, some legal research that we have some guidance from our legal consultants. That's the research side. Coming to the operation side, it has three main things outlined here, but of course, operations is much larger and much bigger in nature. But the three things that I found important back then, and I still feel very strongly about, are process development. How do we get things done? How do we create processes that we can work around or work with in this decentralized environment? Information sharing, found it's critical. If we're working on something, we need it to reach the individuals who care about that stuff. We want information to spread as quickly as possible within this decentralized environment. Within a group of 10, it's not such an issue. With a group of 100, it's going to be a massive issue. So we need to kind of get processes that help us with that. And I think the most pressing, the most important at this stage is lowering barriers and removing friction. And that's, you can immediately come to the understanding like Ikigai has been doing that for us in the onboarding stage, but there are many barriers, things like using Discord, using Miro, using Obsidian. These are all barriers that we're trying to lower so that friction is lower, so that individuals can come in and contribute. But also, while doing this, we have to keep in mind, it's not the best thing to have no friction, no barriers. You kind of want some barriers, some friction, just to filter out individuals who don't align with your value, who don't maybe really want to contribute. So that's operations, and those two things, operations and research, are the most pressing at this stage. And also we set out business development and put this out as 3 things, but I found these 3 things kind of happen naturally, just as a process of building within this decentralized community we call Catalyst. So that's skill search, bridge building, and colony strategy. And it has just been happening naturally. So maybe in the future, these will take, especially colony strategy, will take more and more of an importance as we try to select which colonies to bring on board the Little Fish Foundation as we expand more and more. So that covers organization labs and also some guiding questions. Let's see what they say. How do we organize the efforts of a decentralized organization towards common goals? As we grow, it will take more and more of an importance, the decentralized part. How do we build a celebratory culture at work? What are some current future issues we face? Which experiments can we run to learn? Yeah, so some guiding questions about organizational labs and what we're trying to achieve. So at this stage, I'd like to, if you guys have any questions, thoughts on any of this.
I just had like a small thought on like appreciation, like, you know, workspace appreciation for the work being done. And I do agree that it's a culture that has to be built. And recently I was watching like a documentary called The Hale End Story or something, which is like the, have you guys heard of Arsenal Football Club, English Premier League? So they have like a younger generation, they develop younger generations to become like first team players. So it's a documentary about how these individuals who have nothing to do with each other have to come together, play together as a team and develop connections. And every time someone scores a goal, like after the game is done, the whole team comes and claps for them and like appreciates them and all of that. I think a similar kind of thing can happen with us. Like when we have our bi-weekly meets, we can just like call out the names of everyone that has contributed and just give them a round of applause, or just say whatever we have to say, nice things we have to say about them, you know, just so that, you know, it gives them like an adrenaline pump, which is not very different from the likes and likes or the icons that we give on Discord. You know, you feel appreciated. So that's, I think, one way of doing it.
Yeah, literally a celebratory culture. Yeah, that would be a great doco to check out. As far as thoughts, when I looked at the guiding questions, and I think we're going to go over this. This is sort of an easy sort of comment. Like alignment is sort of a relationship, so alignment to goals. So then it's just like, okay, what exactly are the goals of the total of Little Fish, and then, you know, goals, vision, mission, which we do a really good job of in the vault. And then which are the ones that take priority for org labs, you know, like how do we, and we can sort of translate each of the goals, vision, mission through the org labs lens, you know, like, so somebody that's interested in these things, research, operations, process development, you know, all very key and foundational, but they all have a connection in some way, sometimes bigger than others, to the goals and vision. So that's I just like the idea of alignment to those things.
Yeah, just expanding on that. organizational labs, the way I think about it, is kind of the alignment center for little fish as a whole. Like we're trying to organize the efforts of all the little fish who are trying to go to that common place that we want to achieve, that we want to go to. And organizational labs is kind of experimenting and trying new things to make that possible in this decentralized environment, and making that possible within our values, doing it in the little fish way. And that's the next part we're going to talk about.
All right.
So this is all put out in this part of the white paper. We put this out back in April, I think. Once we found what a teal organization was, it immediately made sense to us to implement our organization, the Little Fish Foundation, on these principles. And three things really come to the front when we say a teal organization. Three things that really pop out. The first is distributed decision making. So the way I think about this is decision-making power rests on the individuals who are the most interested, who have the most at stake on that decision. So that means anybody can start a new project, anybody can go ahead and try new things. They have the autonomy, the freedom to make those decisions. But again, bringing that back to alignment, if anybody can make decisions, how do we make sure that those decisions follow what the whole is trying to achieve? And that's the problem that we're trying to solve. Second part of these principles is natural fluid hierarchies. And there's this amazing saying somewhere here, right? Influence flows to people who have the most expertise, passion, or interest. So that's coming back to that thought of who has the most at stake in that decision. That person has the influence. That person kind of has that decision-making power. And it is a very kind of soft power and an abstract kind of thing. It does require a certain honesty and certain understanding of all of these individuals. And it is an always dynamic changing thing. So we don't have the hierarchical structure of classical organizations. We don't have someone just saying, we do this. No, it's the hierarchies hopefully will be dynamic, natural, fluid. And the final one that most affects, I think, our role as inside organizational labs is the self-management of participants. Our role here is to kind of awaken that idea of, oh yeah, I can self-manage. I can take initiative. I can see problems. I can solve those problems on my own. We're kind of trying to awaken that creative spirit of human beings that exists in every one of us, but really has been dampened and taken away in these hierarchical organizations, because those organizations just tell you what to do, so you don't have to think. Here, you kind of have to think. And I think, say, mental block that exists in most of us because of this, because of our learnedness in these hierarchical organizations. But once you can overcome it, it comes very swiftly and easily, because I know everyone like identifies problems. We all identified problems. We just don't take the next step in solving those problems. But once we get there, like it just follows through. It just follows through on solving those problems. So that's the core of teal organizations. Well, teal organizations is much larger than that, but that's the core of what we want to take from those. That is the type of organization that we're trying to build. If you guys have any questions and thoughts on this.
Yeah, because it's sort of it's just interesting that the sort of mental blocks towards accepting and getting people to participate and change their culture. So it's sort of changing someone's culture, or wait a minute, changing someone's mindset, individual mindset, and then organizational culture. So, it gives me a reason why I gravitate and why I'm passionate about organizational labs, because there is this part you can make the most, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, meaning that even if you make the most incredible structure for individuals, if they don't have the mindset, or if it can also not take. So there's this idea of changing the individual and changing the individual but sort of initiating and doing things such that mindsets change. That there is a real mental component. I guess that's my comment. It's just like I'm seeing the mental component to it. It's not just an org chart and changing, like the website or saying here's teal principles, but there can be support of the individual and in myself. Like I can support myself in making a transition into this different way of structure and different mindset. Yeah.
I mean, we'll have to provide the support a little bit initially, at least, because even though we just started, like I initially found it hard to like keep myself on track until I did like the buddy sessions, and then Joss and Justin came along, and then I could like, work with them and like not like chill sometime and just like relax, you know what I'm saying? So I can keep working with, so that peer pressure is there in a positive way. So
that's right. Peer pressure as a positive thing, like positive peer pressure, because normally we think of it as like, oh, it's sort of helping us do something that we shouldn't. But in these new organizations, just like you say, Chakan, it becomes natural, like, and that natural supportive force of peer pressure, peer force, peer alignment, which I think goes to that appreciation, function. Because then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, look, I'm getting, supported or peer pressure for the things that I want to do that's in alignment. And so yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. And that connects us to the final part of all of this. We've heard about what the objectives of organizational labs is, what the teal organization principles are that we're building on top of, and we have our values, Little Fish values. You find all of these in the white paper, and I'm going to try something else. So there are 5 values that I found apply to organizational labs work. The first one is it starts within the individual. And I'd like to ask you guys, does that ring any bells? Because the conversation we were just having is very similar to it. So
yeah, the individual mindset, the individual, like the initiative and ability to work. Yeah, in that way.
Yeah, exactly. So this mindset, we can try to help awaken it, but that it just has to come from the individual to, okay, yeah, I can do it. I can try to, I see those problems. I can take that initiative. I can start working towards these goals that I'm seeing. So it kind of has to come from the inside to get out of that manager mindset, getting told what to do mindset. That is the first one. It starts within the individual. And then the end goal is self-actualization through community. So you do this long enough, that's the promise of Little Fish. What we're promising is you self-actualize through community, because we're social animals. All of us, Little Fish, what we do is we come together in our communities, like the Little Fish Foundation. We work together towards common goals. And as we achieve those, as we grow ourselves, as we work through our ikigai, and our ikigai in this way is our pathfinding to that self-actualization, to that community actualization. That's how you get there. So as org labs, what we do is we take those individuals that have awakened that responsibility, that idea of, okay, I can get these things done, and we kind of help them through to self-actualization and community actualization, through designing business processes, through organizational design, through lowering those barriers. through making sure everyone has reach to that information that they need to succeed. Again, through lowering barriers, so that, okay, you have to use Git to upload something to the vault, but a random non-technical person will not have that knowledge. So we kind of help them to get that knowledge as quickly as possible. So that's what we're trying to achieve as org labs, to make all of that simpler, all of that easier for any individual that is on that path.
Oh, that's good. That's great. Holy crap. I think that's incredible. I think that's exactly, that says it really, really well. Self-actualization through community, like how that happens through business processes and, doing this support for the awakening sort of thing, emerging thing, helping emergence happen in an individual and in an organization. Yeah.
Right. So let's go to the white paper and then see these there, because we rewrote this with Jem back in April. I find it very satisfying to come back to these and then see, wow, these actually like make a lot of sense today. It's not just some random stuff we wrote. So it's like it's very, very fun realizing that. So it starts within the individual. You just discussed self-actualization through community. This is one of the ones I've missed on the agenda, but it is very important as well. The worst condition determines the outcome, and you can think of this just within that Git example. Like, if you can't push to Git and then clone to Git and then contribute, like, you can't contribute if you can't do that. So your worst conditions, they determine the outcome. So within that mindset, that helps us identify problems. Within that mindset, we see, so a non-technical person doesn't know that, so we will need to help make that condition much simpler for them, so that the outcome is much better. Because if that person doesn't spend that 10 hours trying to get to work, instead they spend just 1 hour, we've just increased their value to the community and their enjoyment of the work by a ton. So we keep that in mind as we're identifying these problems. Yeah, go ahead, Newman.
Well, I was just thinking, that all kinds of things happen. I mean, because that can be, the goal of somebody working, and there's something about like working shoulder to shoulder. It's just kind of how it's sort of like come up for me is like as like a personal ikigai. Like, I like working with peers, and when my worst condition, like if I'm with a peer group and everybody knows Git, and then it's sort of like, oh, I'm outside, and so like bringing people in strengthens the bond, strengthens the individual and the whole. And this thing that actually is a big part of what Little Fish does about like, bringing the like helping everyone get their wallets together. Like, it does seem, and maybe this is a general DAO structural thing about like, we want to strengthen our community. Yeah,
I totally missed the point. What was that?
Well, like the worst condition determines the outcome. And so we use this idea of GitHub, like not having a skill. The worst, I guess it's like the weak link in the chain or something. It's sort of like that determines. And I don't know if that's just a bad analogy or.
No, it's exactly the same thing. Yes.
Yeah. So it's just sort of like, if we can strengthen the individual links, then we can strengthen the whole chain. So it's kind of like the lowest common denominator, or but then in a positive light. It's not just it is an organizational concept that we want to strengthen we want to celebrate our strengths. That's that appreciation board. And then we want to, the worst condition determines the outcome, meaning that we want to support and be aware of the, where the problems are, which is something that is an innate human thing. Like we see problems. It's not been affected by the sort of managerial, hierarchical, structural thing that, that's been imposed. But foundationally, we see problems, and so one of our things that we can do is to sort of say, okay, once you see a problem, we make it frictionless to get into the solution making, I guess, or some organizational structure that is more conducive to group fixing, I guess. Yeah. That might not have helped. I probably helped you a little bit, and then we went right back down into oh man.
Welcome, Amir. You joined us.
Hey, everyone.
Okay.
Hey.
So
Hey.
we're going through the agenda. I think if you can put the agenda again in the chat, Newman, that'd be helpful.
Yep.
Right now, we're talking about how do we achieve the objectives of organizational labs using the Little Fish Way, and kind of talking about the things we have in the white paper, in the Little Fish Way part, the philosophy and the values of Little Fish. And we're having a discussion on what that means within organizational labs. How does that help us understand our roles as workers in organizational labs, trying to achieve those goals? So
I see.
the one we were talking about is the worst condition determines the outcome. And you can also think of this as each of us have our own strengths and each of us have our own weaknesses. And the thing is, we can uplift each other through supporting each other, just so that that worst condition, that weakest link, is no longer. If you are a non-technical person, a technical person can help you on your way so that that is no longer an issue for you, so you can easily contribute. So that's where that idea comes in. So it gets you from seeing those problems to, okay, how do we solve those problems? Helps you kind of think of that through that lens.
I see you.
Next one is creating common knowledge. So I think this should be a common goal for all DAOs, all decentralized projects, all open source projects. We should be sharing our information and we should be creating common knowledge. And this applies on the ecosystem scale, and this applies in the small scale within organizational labs and within Little Fish Foundation. So the things we do, the processes we create, if they're not adopted, it's useless. The knowledge we create, the wallet research we do, the tool research we do, if they're not used, they're useless. But if they are used, if it's common knowledge amongst us, then it brings a lot of value. Then it's really useful. If we have just last week, I think Emre created a new channel, Set Your Time Zone. And before that, I think we had that bot for like 2 months. I think Newman, you said it, you let Emre know. And then suddenly it became useful. Like everybody set their time zones are no longer an issue now. So it's super important that it becomes common knowledge. Like it was there, I saw it, and I didn't do anything about it, and nobody did anything about it. So it's really important to get that idea of common knowledge out there, and it's our role as organizational labs to make that knowledge known to everyone in Little Fish as well. So that's any thoughts on that one?
I think I'm already jumping ahead to the looking at the weekly reports. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I've got some ideas. I'll save it for then.
Awesome. So the next one is permissionless innovation. So this is something that hopefully we'll get more and more of as we build Little Fish. What this means, what distributed decision-making, natural fluid hierarchies, and self-management means, really, within TL organizations, it means that you can just start your own project. It means you can just go ahead and do whatever you want. well, whatever you want, as in like within the goals of the organization. So, but you don't need to ask for permission. You just go and do it. And if that thing aligns, we somehow make it a part of Little Fish, and then we go forward together. And that's an idea that we'll understand more and more as we progress. It's not an idea that I understand as well as creating common knowledge, I would say at this stage. But it's something that I truly believe in. Like if we can have a decentralized organization that is using the idea of permissionless innovation, that you can just go out and build, and then what you build helps the community, the organization, that will result in just complete awesomeness. I think a great model for this is Google with their take your Fridays off, just do whatever you want. And then Gmail came out of it. I think Google Docs came out of it. All of those great services and products came out of just letting everybody just do whatever they want. So if we can build that into our culture, if we can build that into our systems, that's just going to be an amazing place to be a part of, the amazing community and organization. And as organizational labs, that's what we're trying to spread. That's what we're trying to make culture. That's what we're trying to create.
I think that that's a great example of the, work your Ikigai Friday at Google. That's an organizational change that resulted in common knowledge, that made an effect in the organization. And people probably didn't get it at first. They thought it was kind of weird or didn't know how to do it, or some people totally did the opposite, or the fear of take Fridays off, that they just totally goofed off or weren't effective or whatever. They probably did that, but on the whole, we've got really real benefit to Google, to the organization, because of this following this principle, permissionless innovation. Yeah,
exactly. The last one, the one I understand the least, but the one I find the most useful.
I think Harsha understands this one the most. I think Harsha understands this one.
I need to look at the agenda. 1 second. What are you guys talking about?
Okay,
unity and design. Unity and design.
Oh.
This is a design principle that we came up with. It just sounded cool, and then it felt awesome to say, okay, unity and design. So I'm just going to ask you, what do you think it means? Because yeah,
I didn't. No, it's blowing. You just came up with it. It sounds very legit. It sounds very legit.
No, it's a standard UX like saying.
Yeah.
Unity in design, like one page can't look like Google and the other page like Apple. Like there has to be a unity, not just in the design, but in the whole structure, design in the organizational level as well, like the whole thing. So
I think like this is what I've no, go ahead, Newman.
Well, no, I'm curious what you're going to say, because because that's what I had that same vision in my mind, like as an old UX term. Yeah. So in the Little Fish way, what does it, when you guys were thinking it up, what came out?
Right. The original place where it came out was just UI UX. Like that's where it came out from. And the idea was, okay, you have a little fish and you have their actions, and it's pretty much the same as the colony and their actions. It's the same thing. A little fish colony, it's pretty much the same thing. So it was just a UI thing to begin with, if I recall correctly. But then we started thinking about this at a larger level. So what does it mean? So we're building a decentralized organization, and we're building on a decentralized network. Our software and our organization pretty much match what they look like. So we are building on peer-to-peer networks and peer-to-peer work relations, peer-to-peer organizations. So we use Obsidian, which creates peer-to-peer networks of docs. So it all looks very similar from all of these different perspectives. And this applies to I found it very useful, especially in kind of trying to make decisions about things. When we look at actions, for example, if we come up with a new feature for actions, we keep unity and design at mind, and that tells us if we to make that decision, that creates two different paths, and that's a no-no. If it creates two different paths, it has to. It's like a heuristic to help you make those kinds of decisions and think about it. And the part where I think I like the most is in organizational design, because UI UX sounds like super, it's useful there and it's known there, but in organizational design, what it means, I think we'll discover. And the thing is, since we're trying to align everything, unity in design will help us get there. At least that's my belief, that with unity in design, if we're all asking that question, we already have examples from everywhere else in the organization. If we're trying to make business processes, for example, but there already exists some business processes, it has to be unified in some way. So you can look at the examples, and that those examples kind of make sense to you, and are unified in some manner or form.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, this one is a little more difficult to grasp. So when you make a decision and make a split path, go back to that if we've got a minute, just to like how that fits. Because what I think of as unity in design is that like when I'm using two different pieces of software and I hit the control and the F key, or I hit the control and that gives me contextual menu stuff in one area, and then I hit it in another area and it does something completely different. Or it's sort of like Alt Tab moves my moves to different windows. But if you do it in another, it's just like it's like a language, and they use the same bits of language. I don't know if that's sort of helpful. But the you know, like that they feel the same. It's like you're speaking the same language in different parts of the organization, you know, like in the design, in the or the structure, that it follows the same patterns, you know, that you don't break the pattern, you know, like red means stop and green means go at one section, and then it's reversed in another. It's kind of like, it's almost like a dark pattern when you reverse the expectation. Does that sort of fit?
I think it does. The way I try to think about it at this stage, and this is the one I understand the least, but I find it useful. As we grow more and more, decisions will be made at random parts of the organization, and those decisions will take time to permeate throughout the organization. So if those decisions are not unified in design, that will result in misalignment. But if they are unified in design somehow, so we will kind of keep alignment. So as a way to think about it, I feel that it will help us get to a more be more aligned. But we'll see what it means as it unfolds.
It's also an emergent property, I think, as Little Fish grows. It's like, as a collective, we'll more and more refine what that means. And like, if you look at the Reinventing Organizations book, like the advice process is super important for that. Like, you're free to make decisions wherever you are and empowered to do so, but you need to seek advice from all stakeholders who are affected by that decision, so they can give you feedback and say, hey, actually, this is starting to emerge and you may want to change it to be like this, so that you're in alignment with the egregor of Little Fish. And I think that advice process should be a core fundamental tenet, to say you must seek advice. If you don't, we're going to say you need to seek advice, and make that one of our core tenets, because that's how we actually coordinate, rather than having strict rules or a piece of paper that says, here are design guidelines. It should be ever evolving and done through consultation with the people who are directly affected by it.
I can jump in here because I think that's a really, really important thing, and it touches on the permissionless innovation. Because Charkan, what you said was that, that these decisions, these innovations happen distributed all through the organization. And then we talked about like whether those decisions or new innovations or projects or things are in alignment and how they get alignment. And I was like, my question was like, well, an innovator has to trust that it will have value and that it will become common knowledge, because that's sort of a goal, to create common knowledge, that it gets picked up and used through the organization. And you know, that's my question, is like, how is that done? Nori shows up and answers the question, gives the answer to a question that he didn't know was there, that it's the advice process. Because then you ask the stakeholders, and we talked about stakeholders a little bit up the line too. Yeah. That's it. All makes sense. It all makes sense.
So, quick question: how do we define stakeholders in a distributed organization? Like, you know, for example, it's obvious in social issues, like if it's like a vote on some LGBTQ rights, and obviously the stakeholders is the LGBTQ community, right? So in a distributed community like ours, how do we figure out the stakeholders?
That's a good question. I came from Amazon, and Amazon's one of the flattest, most randomly organized organizations I've ever been in. Like, there's nobody at the top saying, everybody do this. They're based on what are called 2 pizza teams. So it's a team that you can feed by ordering 2 pizzas. So it's about 8 people, maybe 10. And each one on their own decides, this is what we're going to do this year. And really there is this kind of advice process and consultation that goes up. Or if you say, I need to create a new API that integrates S3 with this other thing, the new blockchain thing we're building, you need to go find the people who are actually working on those things. And there's no organizational tree to look at. It's through relational kind of contacts, and you move through the organization. Like, you reach out to somebody you know over here and say, hey, I need to find somebody who's good at blockchain, who's working on that right now, and they'll eventually lead you. But you start to develop new skills on how to find the right people, especially if you know that getting advice from them is critical to how we operate. But there may be other ways, like a shared Discord or something where you can ask in public. But I've found in the past that a lot of it's relational, and you need to reach out and have good relationships with people throughout the organization.
Correct. Yeah, so I completely agree. I was specifically referring to finding the people that you need to get in touch with. We need to help the members of the community find the people that they want to find eventually. That is where actions come in, right? Because we are all connected in Little Fish based on our actions. And you can actually check for specific actions that you're looking for and the people that have done the specific actions and connect with them. So that makes sense.
And yeah, and that makes, you know, when actions become common knowledge, like in the app, where you can look at Harsha's actions, and it's like, oh, Harsha's doing all this UX work, you know, or you can look and see all the people in the colony that are, you know, Org Labs or Love House or the Tech Help Collective. Like, then, like, that would help us discern like who the stakeholders were, or who the experts that are at least have a vision or a perspective on those stakeholders. And then, you know, like, yeah.
Oh,
Like,
we should make seeking advice. If it's important to seek advice, then that should be an action of itself. And then if we're visualizing it in some way, you can actually maybe visualize like neurons and things firing as different people in the org connect to this advice process. And the more they do it, the heavier those connections get and build out. But it would be really cool to visualize that, kind of like this organizational synapse tree of the connections being made as people seek advice back and forth.
Yeah, I love that
Yeah,
idea.
and I also, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just wanted to say, I love that idea.
Yeah, I think specifically from Nori's example, I think peer-to-peer HR would make a lot of sense. As in, say, peer-to-peer HR can be like anyone in the organization that conducts like onboarding workshops, say some week, and anyone that wants to onboard joins the workshop, gets onboarded. Similarly, they can check in on people that haven't been active, as in haven't been creating action. So just check in and see how they're doing. Just so, we are taking care of everyone inside of the community and have peer-to-peer accountability sessions. So basically, we'll all be performing HR activities without actually saying, okay, there is one HR. Yeah.
I think that's definitely the way to do it within the decentralized context, because since it is decentralized, the information lies in the hands of just a few of us. And those that have that information are working with that person who's not contributing, who's not taking action. It's kind of falls on that individual to fulfill that role of HR in this context. Definitely. And coming back to what you said, Nori, about seeking advice, being in action, I think that's definitely something that we'll discover. Like that's why we want to build actions so that they are extensible, so that we can build in something like this action is seeking advice, that we just use it within Littlefish, and anybody else can use it as well. But then we will be able to create our own UI for that. That looks like nodes and synapses. We can make it look as cool as we want, and we can use it. I think it's definitely something we'll discuss as we go further with the app. But I think,
the seeking advice is sort of like, a little bit about like, or what do you think? That catalyst and the proposal process is sort of like, here is my innovation, I'd like advice. And actually, in the beginning, there's this whole like comment period. And then we kind of have like a distributed decision making in the form of a vote. So in a way, I see the catalyst process in this, in this way, from this light. Speaking about the weekly report, I don't know if we want to move on to the weekly report so we can really make it specific. Yeah. As an innovation. And I don't know where the idea came from. I think it sort of developed, but I saw the problem of like, there's all of this this knowledge that was sort of flowing through the organization, through the scroll of the actions panel specifically, but then all these other things that are going on in the Discord that I just wanted to sort of like do for myself, like what happened, like who's doing what in the organization, what is the organization. And I was like, okay. And I guess it started with the open office hour. I was just like, I'm going to be here. I made the commitment individually to just focus in on Littlefish for 1 hour. And then I was, and we did like a couple of Ikigai onboarding, but then I was there by myself one time and I was like, ooh, I should just look and see what's going on. And then I was like, I'm going to write this down. Oh, this is a perfect time to write a newsletter. So that in short is how the weekly report newsletter came to be. And then in the light of this conversation, I was like, okay, this is what I did. I was just thinking of an action, like what could I produce in the hour? I didn't feel comfortable just saying, I sat around and thought about and did something with Littlefish as an action. I wanted to make an action, like a document. I was like, okay, what is that document? Okay, it's this newsletter. But then I didn't really know it at the time. And now I kind of understand that I was seeking advice. I was like, okay, here's the thing. What feedback do you have? And then we started to get the feedback, and we've changed it a little bit. One innovation, one sort of iterative design evolution was, and based on time, I would just sort of copy in the action. I would do a search for the last week, and I would copy in the Discord actions channel, and I would clean it up, you know, and sort of take out the things that were just sort of, you know, conversational. And it's like, okay, these are the people that did this. And then I was like, well, that's not as useful as this. You can just look through the Discord channel. But then I started to break it down by the colony houses inside. So I was like, okay, this is what happened in, you know, organizational labs. This is what happened in Tech Help Collective. This is what happened in the Forge. And then you're starting to like, oh wow, a lot of stuff happened in the Forge. And I would summarize it as if I was doing like a report, you know, just verbally, like if I was just speaking to someone that was like, oh, this is what's going on. So that's sort of in general the weekly report as I see it in this organizational change place.
That's awesome. Is there any other kinds of things going on a weekly cadence to reflect on what happened? Like, I've been in teams where every Friday we do a weekly reflection where we basically talk about what went well, what can be improved, and what are some actions, and use it as a iterative growth process just to reflect on the week and kind of reorient. Did we achieve what we wanted to? What went wrong? How can we make it better next week? Kind of process. And getting into that cadence of doing that can be really super helpful just to keep us on that growth mindset and as an organization doing stuff. And I think that would be a really good complement to a weekly review to like summarize all that, to say, here's what went well, here's where the team thinks we can do better, and maybe do it with each of the different colonies. But
so I think these meetings, the THC alignment, the organization labs alignment, those kind of are supposed to serve that role, but at this stage, it's not formalized to any sort of reflection. But maybe just including that in every agenda, 20 minutes, what went well, what didn't go well, that could be a way to do it. But I'd love for your ideas on how to structure that, Nori.
yeah, there's lots of tools. We already use Miro, so we can do something on there to make it really simple. But
Take it, Harsha.
Did I say something?
Well, no, I think that's what we're doing with our accountability partner thing. We're just doing it on a peer-to-peer. But what I just sort of, what Nori sparked for me is maybe we do it as a collective, as a house, you know, as a colony, a sub-colony. So we choose like the Forge as our accountability buddy. You know, and again, this is sort of unity in design. It's just like we do it individually, and then we just level up, and then we do it as a sub-colony, and we just choose a colony. We do it to the Tech Help Collective, and we're like, okay, we're writing now a little summary of what the org labs did for the week, and we're writing it to our accountability buddy for this week, which is the Forge. And now the Forge writes to us, like a pen pal, accountability buddy. You know, I think that would be a great a design element that is unified through the organization. Just the accountability buddy, because I see it and it fits with our worst condition determines outcome, meaning that like we're in this peer network, and we just communicate to our peer. That's the only thing that we need to do. We can do it, you know, on the level of the individual, and we can do it on the level of the colony, and then or the sub-colony, and then we could maybe do it colony to colony. So like Little Fish as a colony, you know, writes a pen pal weekly accountability buddy thing to C4C or Gimbal Labs, or, you know, any of the other, you know, fledgling colonies. And it's just like, hey, this is what we're doing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, keep going.
Just a couple of things on this. So there are both like doing it as like a group and doing it as like a peer-to-peer accountability buddy. So with the peer-to-peer accountability buddy, what we might lack is expertise in the field, but personal accountability will be taken care of, as in I will be asked what I did, and I'll make sure to hit my goals for the next week and all of that. So when I was working with Snapbrillia, they did like a session every day. So every day people used to like meet and say, oh, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And the sessions, since the teams were large, the sessions lasted for almost like an hour and a half, 2 hours. So the actual time I spent saying what I needed to say is about like 2 to 3 minutes. And for 1 hour, 20 minutes, I'll be sitting there watching all these coders like speak about code. And I haven't written a single line of code in my life, so I don't get anything. So, those kind of like inefficiencies, if we can balance out in both these processes and find like a middle ground, I think it'll be helpful.
Yeah. I mean, those are standard kind of Scrum techniques. Like you do your daily stand up, you talk about what you did yesterday, what you're going to do today, and if you're blocked. But usually you do them in small teams, like of 5 to 7 people. So it takes no more than 10 minutes to do. Doing it with an entire company is like, I can see how that's not fun, showing up for an hour and a half where you have like a 30-second speech and then you're there. I think you can clearly get accountability, the intent of that, with much smaller groups, even with just one other person, because you're putting it out there like, this is what I'm going to do today, and you can hold me accountable tomorrow and say, when we check in, you can say, what happened? You said you were going to do this. Did something go sideways, or how can we unblock you, or whatever it is?
Makes sense.
Some things that come to mind with this discussion to me is, as we scale, as we get more and more community members on board, we will have that issue of, okay, if we're having these meetings, 5 to 7 people, should we have a new meeting? Are we going to create a new one to onboard new people? Do we need one for the Eastern Hemisphere? So those will be a constant problem that we're going to encounter more and more and more. And I'm getting the idea of these one-on-one sessions can be very useful, and they can be very useful in so many different ways for each individual. Let me phrase it like this. So one contributor will be contributing to us maybe once a month. Someone like me will be contributing every day, constantly. The amount of accountability that those two individuals have is wildly different. One will just say, oh yeah, I just want to do 1x research this month, and that's my contribution. And I will say, I need to do this 20 things in the next 7 days. So the amount of contribution, the amount of accountability we need is different. But I love that the peer-to-peer model can scale to any of those needs without an issue. Like you can just keep it accountable with a single person, and then make that knowledge public to everyone else so that they can see. I love that it can scale, and it can scale just naturally, because all it needs to do, we don't need to set a new meeting for it. What we need to do is, oh, will you be my accountability buddy? Let's meet every day at X time, and that's it. So working through that and working with like asynchronous new models that can kind of bend and flex to fit all our different schedules from all over the world. I think those types of organizational processes will be very helpful. And here, I think Unity and Design was very helpful as well, because if we create this one peer-to-peer model of doing it, and then we just spread that out over Little Fish, and then we just use that in Unity and Design. Like everybody can use it. And maybe you want to do it with 5 people. So it's not peer-to-peer, but it's just with 5 people that you organize. But it still kind of fits that model. And we just create an action for it. And then you just share your action. This is my accountability. This is what I did. And completely asynchronous.
Yeah, I think like the TE study groups, that you can pick one that's in a time zone that works for you. You could have accountability groups that advertise like, we meet at this time. We want to have a maximum of 5 people. If there's space, you can join.
Right.
TE study groups?
The token engineering study groups.
Oh, for the yep. Okay. And that sort of like brings me around to this concept that I've been the idea of looking for group, from like the game model. It's just like getting, like somehow publishing the kind of has and the need the supply and demand, like, okay, I'm looking for accountability buddy in this time zone to meet at this time. Yeah, I think that would be a great sort of structural piece that would work. And then the async is wonderful. Yeah, that definitely is a problem that we face. You know, and even just individually, like you know, being able to do it consistently without having a consistent time, I guess. Being able to flex, like you said, check out.
Beyond accountability, one thing that the daily stand-ups helps is communication within a team to understand what other people are doing that's closely related to what you're doing. So you can help coordinate, or if someone's blocked, you're probably the closest person to be able to unblock them and help them. So that's another thing to consider, is not just the accountability stuff, but the team kind of
common knowledge. Yeah, use that term. Yeah,
but also like understanding where the project is and how other people are contributing, so that you know you can plan your next moves or actions based on what other people are doing. So that's another purpose for that, is that communication mechanism to keep up to date with stuff. But that might be accomplished through other means as well.
I think that applies like the most at this stage to the software project, the application development. And I think we could go the daily stand-up method to keep everyone aligned, and then post about it, the outcomes of the daily stand-up, just a 10-15 minute thing, right? Post about it to the community, so everybody else who really wants to get involved within the application development stuff can come in and join the conversation there as well. So I'll take that to the devs. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And that would be exactly what would take place, or Mike, in the form of a question. Is that what would happen in an alignment meeting, like these weekly meetings of teams? You know, because I've never done this. I've never done the Scrum thing. I've read about it. I've heard about it for quite a while, but I've never actually done it. It seems like it's a wonderful sort of scalable and very like engaged, you know, meeting facilitation type, as opposed to sort of the presentation and, you know, questioning. It seems like that's like a throwback from an old, you know, mental model, you know, like what we talked about earlier about this sort of hierarchical structure, like embedded in our own sort of personal psychology and mental mindset. And then so we're like, oh, I have a meeting, so I've got to prepare a presentation, and then people have to listen, and then we talk. And then once I do the presentation, then we talk about it, as opposed to, you know, more circular, where we just each have a bit of time that we just roll around, and then, you know, like more peer to peer. I'm seeing that now, and that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, daily stand-ups are an interesting mechanism that came out of the agile software development paradigm. And some of the concepts are like, we talk about pigs and chickens, and there's that story of a pig and a chicken saying, hey, let's open up a breakfast shop. And of course they're going to serve ham and eggs, and the pig is all in and the chicken's just kind of an interested party, right? So at scrums or daily stand-ups, only the pigs can talk, because they have skin, or literally bacon in the game for this thing. And the chickens can be there, but they can only listen. They can't speak. So that's the one way we did, like developers can do their scrum, and then the manager and the TPMs and the project managers can be there to hear, but they can't actually talk in those meetings because they're not directly contributing to the success of that project on the software development level. And the other thing is, yeah, there's no crosstalk. So each person basically talks about, what did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? And if you have any blockers, then the team has to stop and unblock them at that moment. or say, hey, I know the answer to that. Let's get together after this, and kind of free them up. So that's the other thing. But there shouldn't be a bunch of conversation happening in Scrum. It's meant to be fast. That's why it's called a stand-up too, because it's done standing. So people don't want to stand for half an hour. They want to stand for 5 or 10 minutes and then get on with their day.
Hey, Nori, quick question. So is there an advantage for these meetings to happen every day as opposed to like every week or something like that?
Pretty much the daily cadence allows you to course correct really fast. If someone is stuck, they don't spend a whole week stuck. If someone can unblock them, if they're not the type to reach out for help. So it allows the team to say, hey, you've been working on the same task for the past 3 days, and we expected it to take 1. What's going on? So it allows you to help people sooner. So that's kind of one of the reasons for doing it more frequently. Plus, they're shorter if you do 1 day at a time. And most people don't remember what they've done for a whole week.
That's true.
Right. I could see that. And then, 1 day means it's just sort of short. One week means it might be a little bit longer. And then the course correction. And then it just becomes like a part of an initiative. Like it can be part of here's another concept I've been thinking of, is like the data structure of a project, of an organization, like a community as software, and it just has a data structure. And it's just like, okay, when you commit to the organization labs, org labs, here are the things that we do. There's a stand up, there's a alignment meeting. These are the documents that our organizational documents. These are the areas where we talk. These are the tools that we use. It just becomes kind of a part of the parameters. And then you're like, okay, once a day is too much. So you just tick the box over to 1 week, and then you see how that is. And it's like, oh yeah, no, we took it. And it's not a huge upset to make a change in the parameter. It's just like, oh yeah, we're fiddling with the knobs on the machine, and that machine, like, okay, this, I can get real Newman about this. That machine structure, like my project is a machine, and that allows me to be a human. It's just like, like I can stay firmly in my humanity, and then let my organization or my project or my become a machine. Like it's just the framework, and that framework is it doesn't have to be dynamic, or kind of, not dynamic, but it doesn't have to like adjust to me, or it's like a dance partner that it has enough firm pressure to sort of like guide us around, so that we can use it. The structure is there, as opposed to like letting it be kind of a thing. I don't know that last bit, but
yeah, these mechanisms evolved to protect teams and individuals from the random chaos of things, like especially inside of big organizations. Like the team has a plan, they have a 1 week sprint, they're going for it, and then the product owner goes, oh, I want this feature in, can you start working on it right away? Having these structures in place can say, hey, we've already done our sprint planning. We're having our next sprint planning meeting next Wednesday. You have to wait till then to bring this in. You can't derail us, because we've already planned it out and committed to delivering this. And it's only a week or 2 weeks or whatever your sprint length is. So you can wait. So it's kind of also that armor. It's like, instead of kind of a machine, it can be that armor, that exoskeleton that makes you stronger and able to resist the elements or whatever.
Yeah, the exoskeleton is good. Also, the cellular membrane. It's just like, no, we've got the semi-permeable membrane up. I'm kind of thinking of that movie where they like put their headphones on. They're like, I've got my headphones on. You can't talk to him when he's got his headphones on. That these become kind of the language or design pattern that's unified through the thing. We know, that like, we could even be on like, well, in Catalyst, for instance, we know that there's this fund cycle, and we're not really like those structural elements can become the sort of armor, the membrane, the thing that like holds us together. And then that cellular metaphor of the body in a cell really does, I think that could be juicy.
You went full biology on this one.
Yeah. We got into a weird space. Yeah. I don't know anything about biology. I don't know anything about any of this stuff, but it's like art. I don't know much about art, but I know it when I see it.
Or when you like it.
I know when I like it. Know when I like it. Yeah, that's it.
One maybe final question, Nori, but I would stay here forever at the talk organization with you guys, but I don't want to keep any of you for too long. But one final question, maybe. I love the method of structuring these with daily stand-ups and weekly check-ins, reflections. How do we structure those such that we can all participate in those in those meetings in a meaningful way in this decentralized setting? Because each individual is not working full-time. They can contribute just a little bit or contribute much more, and each individual is joining from a random place on Earth. So how do we take those ideas and boil them down to something that can work in this setting, in this async setting?
That's the real trick, and we're not good at that yet. So I was writing in my journal just this morning, like, we need to figure out async better and experiment and iterate. I think video recording or voice recording or written updates are important, but we need to get into a habit where we commit as individuals to say, I'm going to work in this async manner, which means I listen to what other people put in and I respond or interact in some way. And you need some kind of container, like say for the next 24 hours, we're doing our reflection async. So over the next 24 hours, go in and put in your updates, put in your stickies, leave a recording, whatever it is. And then we review it the next 24 hours or whatever, however it works, so that we all commit to doing this. Then we don't all have to show up at the same meeting, and we can be inclusive of people in other time zones and things. But I think it's an experiment. We need to figure it out. What tools work, what cadence works. What is the commitment when you say we're going to work asynchronously? Because there is a bit of a commitment there too.
And I think that's exactly what Organizational Labs is trying to figure out, and then make common knowledge across Little Fish, and then, Catalyst and blockchains. Pretty much all.
And also, I do think as much as we love globalization in terms of like working with people from around the globe, I do think we shouldn't forget localization. Like, for example, Catalyst has like the African Town Hall, the Latin Town Hall. It's the same big community, but it's localized groups that have their own accountability, like, and maybe in the town hall, which happens once a week, there's like a collective accountability session. But I feel like we should also focus on local groups, like say there are say developers or designers or whatever, researchers from Asia, which have like a similar time zone. I think they can meet and figure their things out better when it's not everyone around the world involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a good balance between the local and the global is definitely necessary to get this all going. One maybe last thing that I'd like to put in is there is a discussion now started on the Discord forum about the weekly reports. Any ideas, any feedback, any directions we want to take the weekly reports, we can discuss there and then get it to improve so that it can help us create that common knowledge across Little Fish. And just want to show, like, we didn't get to see it, but just want to show what it looks like, the final one, maybe if you guys haven't seen it. Like, it's a 14-page report. It's got a lot of things in there.
Oh, God.
Yeah. It's my favorite part. I think this is the part you were talking about.
Yeah.
The first one was 38K, and then it starts to grow in size, and the latest is almost 5 megabytes in size.
Yeah.
Oh God, there may be a video in there. I don't. I just started putting a lot of visual stuff so that you can, so that it can be scannable. So you can just sort of like, oh look, here's what the front page of the vault. Here's what the front page of the Discord. You know, so you don't have to look over it. But yeah, it's there's the people that were at the you know, the office, the last office. Yeah, I'm curious. I would love to get the feedback, and I would love to, you know, like, yeah, somehow make it the common knowledge. I think that it's important for, you know, it's the communication, you know, office in the sort of hierarchical thing, and then making it decentralized. It's like each of us becomes, or each unit becomes kind of responsible for communicating and knowing that the goal of is to create common knowledge, so that we all know. So we all know like how many Twitter followers there are, or you know, what you know, another avenue to check on the actions that came through. So we see what's going on, and then we celebrate, you know. And then like I'd like to add like the you know, like all these things, and then make it you know, more of a community thing, like how to get it in the center, how to get that communication in the center, as opposed to just sort of a thing that gets tacked on. And I think that's what happens. I mean, another way to say that is how to make it common knowledge. Yeah.
So one idea that pops into my mind is just connecting the previous conversation to the weekly reports, reflections in the weekly reports, or accountability in the weekly reports. Maybe that is something that we can explore as well.
Yep.
With that,
Yeah.
it would be kind of more interactive, and then the weekly report would just say, this was the accountability, and here's what happened in relation to that. And maybe nothing happened, and then we see.
Oh yeah.
So you are suggesting more like an Excel sheet with like individual names and contributions rather than like a report, is it?
Oh, I think we have the Excel sheet just as a result of the Google form, and then Newman could go in and look at that and put in the good info from there, and then just summarize in the weekly report. And then it could be something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which with the Google form and the spreadsheet?
Oh yeah, the ones that I will create, because this was just very productive, and I need to create a Google form for weekly reflections now.
Nice. Okay. Oh, he's already got it. It's like, no, it's the thing I'm making right now. This guy's amazing. But you know, I was just thinking of the Google sheet. Like we do have the payments. You know, like here are the paid actions that happen. Like that could be put in. Like here, I think of in terms of like who. I don't know. I think that like the money and currency, you know, could be brought in, and you can kind of see like size of contribution, you know, like that's just sort of a thing. And I mean, we may run into some pitfalls of like leaderboard sort of, you know, not scamming, but kind of like focusing too much on the leaderboard and not playing the game, you know, which is good for motivation, but there are pitfalls to some of this, and I know we're going to fall in some of them, but you know, you know, that's one way to if you know it's a trap, you can just spring the trap and sort of see how you get out of it.
Yep.
But more interactive is something that we can look to. I'm glad that people, you know, because it is sort of an innovation. I don't think it really was mine. I think somebody suggested it to me, but it's something that I enjoy doing, and I do think that there's, you know, good value in it. And I do think that it does it can be a part of this new, that it's something that the old organization did. It's something that exists in the old paradigm. And you know, what does it look like in the new paradigm? You know, what does it look like in the new decentralized teal organization? What does a teal organization's newsletter look like? You know, that's Scrum informed and, you know, distributed globally, different time zones. That's a good problem to solve, you know, because of the, you know, commonality of that function, and, you know, for community collaboration standards, like this could be where the rubber meets the road. Yeah.
I just dropped a link in. I saw a bounty on DWork about creating an article on self-management. So I started collecting some resources and putting some stuff together around that. And I'm working on the self-management section, and really focusing on the 4 things that are mentioned in the book around decision-making, organizational structure, compensation, incentives, and performance management. But I didn't know if anybody wanted to collaborate on this, or but also as I start to draft out the actual document beyond just the notes and stuff, what's the best place to do that? Do we share a Google Doc for feedback, or just directly put it into the vault and do a pull request? Or
Well, if we're going to work collaboratively, I think the best place to do it would be on a Google Doc, but even better, I think we can work on, there was this application that helped you work collaboratively on a Markdown doc. I'll get that to you and I'll post it on Discord. I can't remember the name right now. We could work on that, and then it'll be easy to put on the vault right after that.
cool.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
very nice.
Nice. Oh, I'd love to find that. There are a couple of yeah, that'd be great. And then it makes it easy just to slide into Markdown, into the Obsidian Vault.
Great. Thank you, guys. This was a great kickoff, I think. I'm going to put this on YouTube, and it'll be the first of many great alignment meets. Thank you all.
This was amazing.
Yeah. And also,
Yeah, likewise, man.
once the recording is done, I want to like put an idea by you guys and see if it makes sense for Little Fish. So let me know once the recording is done.
Yeah, okay.
Bye, YouTube.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.